Hello and welcome to another edition of Mailbag. What is Mailbag? Well, Mailbag is a feature of the channel where you guys leave lots of comments on the channel and I attempt to answer those comments, or if I can't answer those comments, I throw it out to you guys who have more knowledge on some of this stuff than I do. So let's get into the first mailbag of this session. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. Next one comes from XP50 Player in response to OASYS Combi Bun S2400 for Jazzman, a mailbag I did in October 2021. And XP50 Player writes, any perceived sonic differences between the two synths running the same patches have got to be imaginary. Aren't the DACs identical? Aren't the DACs identical? DACs, for anybody who doesn't understand it, digital audio control chips, I think it is. And digital at the same resolution. Yes, they both run the same resolution, 24-bit and 16-bit replay on the samples. Unless there is some kind of jitter present, the wealth of factory installed and optional streaming sample libraries available for the Kronos is too much to give up, although the OASYS is still a dream. Yeah, I've always said it's really annoying that Korg dropped support for the OASYS and didn't port some of the libraries that they allowed on the Kronos back to the OASYS, because I just think the OASYS is a better workstation. I'll leave it at that. It has better keyboard and better panel displays, but it's not a better workstation. That's the correct statement. And basically, XP50 Player, you're correct. Both have the same ADCs and DACs on both machines, but the circuitry around them is slightly different. Not by a lot, but it is slightly different. And following the same vein, the internal resolution of the boards is both 16-bit, although you might need to see this written as 24-bit on the Kronos. That is only relating to external samples. Okay, so I got that wrong way around a minute ago. And while the engines are supposed to be the same between the two machines, you can only transfer patches from OASYS to Kronos. You can't go Kronos to OASYS. And I have to be honest and say I've never done that, but I've been told by a number of people who are much cleverer than I that you can do it. But I've never done it. I've never transferred a patch from the OASYS to the Kronos. I've never needed to. This is also reinforced by the fact that Kronos behaves differently when functions like effects and velocities are added to the mix. Yeah, so they basically extended the programming on the Kronos. So rather than update the OASYS, the updates went into the Kronos OS. The Kronos is, as I just said there, is by all means a better all-round machine in my view, but the OASYS has a bunch of features that I still think are superior to the Kronos. The 88 key bed on the OASYS is much better than the Kronos in my view. I'm not a concert pianist, by the way. I'm really starting to struggle with my words. It's probably because it's getting a little bit cold out here. But people I know who are pianists have said that the OASYS is a better keyboard than the Kronos. Not a lot in it, but it is a better keyboard. And I think the user interface with the 10-inch screen that's tiltable and all the illumination around the keys and knobs and faders, etc., I think makes the interface far more visually acceptable than the Kronos, because the Kronos basically stripped all that stuff out. You've still got a number of the same knobs and faders pretty much, but you don't have the visual representation about where the knob and the fader is when you load a patch. So the way the Kronos the way the Kronos and the OASYS works is when you load a patch, you load the patch parameters into the various fader positions. But the fader, wherever the fader is currently set, does not affect the patch. So you can have all the faders set effectively down at the bottom of the track, and you load a patch in, and on the OASYS you will see it will actually have where the fader is in terms of where the patch is loaded. And as soon as you move that fader, the fader will then take over the value for whatever that fader is controlling. Okay, but on the Kronos, it's you can't tell that from the panel. You have to look at the screen. Anyway, that's my opinion. It's always my opinion. Okay, this next question comes from Bon Tempo, and it's in response to a video I did in June 2021. But what do we know about the Behringer LM drum, or Linn drum? And Bon writes, okay, what's special about the LM-1, besides the 48 ppq sequencer, is the audio path the signal travels along. Without this specific audio path, it wouldn't even be remembered, except for being one of the first EEPROM drum machines. The samples before they are compended into the U2855 LAW 8-bit format are nice but nothing special. It's once they've been through the machine they get their famous sound. The sound that needs to be converted into the U255 LAW format, then importantly read and decoded by the AM6070 chip. This gives it the gritty and bright sound we recognise. Then another chip, the name of which I forget, is the clock, which tells the AM6070 the speed to read the EEPROM, and where the 8-bit ULAW sound is stored. Changing this speed changes the pitch of the sample and the sound that comes out. And again we get that gritty, recognisable sound when it's changed in pitch. It then passes through various circuitry, including a TL082 op amp, and then onto the mixer section. And I think the output has a nice big fat transformer. This is the sound of the LM-1. If you put samples through that, they will be incredibly punchy and lo-fi. As good as it gets, as far as we have discovered, better than anything else out there. If they do this right, it's going to be one mind-blowing drum machine sampler, as far as sound is concerned. If they don't, then for me, it's just going to be like any other sampler, including all the software samplers that are out there. So the context to this is that last summer Behringer put out a whole bunch of social media feeds with pictures of what the LM drum is going to look like, or proposed to look like. What they said at that point in time is the circuitry had been completed, the case design had been completed, and they were going into their kind of alpha beta testing program on this particular unit, which probably involves also sampling sounds to go onto the unit itself. But since then we've heard pretty much naff all else. And I think this is a number of people have commented over the past few months about, you know, whether we're going to see these Behringer clones and reimaginations that they've put out on social media. And I think a couple of things I will say to that is, one is that they did put out a social media feed just before Christmas that they were having extreme problems sourcing chips, and because of the fact they're having problems sourcing chips, I suspect they are holding on until they can source what I would call a minimal product run. So that's being able to produce enough units that covers the R&D cost, covers the tooling, covers the startup, and covers also the put some profit margin on the table for them. So I suspect that, you know, that's probably what the stumbling block with a lot of this stuff is at the moment, in that a lot of the factories were closed down due to the pandemic in the Far East, and they haven't really started ramping up production. And there are some other industries with much deeper pockets that can afford to pay higher prices for short supply chips than probably some of the synthesizer manufacturers would want to or even can do if that makes any sense. But it was really interesting to hear your more technical run through about why the sound of the original Linn machines was so pivotal in the sort of pop music of the well, I suppose, I mean, I would say pop music, I mean, they're still being used, but predominantly and pivotally they were being used all the way through the 80s and well into the 90s as sort of a go-to sound. And the list of people who used them kind of reads of like a who's who of pop royalty, if you like, all the way from names escape me. I know Phil Collins used one on some stuff, but he was more Roland. But Tears for Fears they used the Linn drum. Pink Floyd used the Linn drum, I believe. So you know, you go through these people and they read like royalty. So thank you very much for that in-depth comment, and see you next time. Bye bye.